To hell with the fake news. Let's get on with some baked news. Welcome to Hippie News Network, HNN. Formerly known as Weedy Weekend, and now on episode 109. Today we're going to be spending most of our time on the legalization across Canada and how it's starting to unfold. I've got a bit of an educational piece, and then we'll talk about a few stories beyond that. Right now, I've got a little bit of grape grapefruit, and God's bud. Made by somebody I know in the Okanagan. And what a beautiful, beautiful flavor. I'm going to show you a little bit of it. There it is at 20 times. And we'll go way in and show you the 200 times, and then we'll get on with business. Let's get that down there at 200 times zoom and show you what that grape god looks like. Isn't that absolutely beautiful? Now let's get back to our stories. Peace and cheers, friends. Love and harmony. First story is the movement of pot by province is what this one's called. It's from Vice News. Vice is doing quite a bit on the legalization as it unfolds. This is what have each province done, and I'm going to briefly go through them all because I think it's important that we understand it as it unfolds throughout from a macro sense from an overarching sense. May have used the word wrong. Newfoundland recently released findings of its public consultations, an online survey on legal cannabis, got over 2,600 responses, and told CBC it's probably the single biggest issue they get people coming to me about and emailing me about. The province isn't expected to table its legislation until spring. Prince Edward Island. The province has over 140,000 people and doesn't seem to know what it wants. So it has asked its residents, and they have until the end of September to give input to a government survey. So again, nothing. Nova Scotia, just like PEI, watching for other provinces for inspiration. I hope they're going to get it from BC. I'll talk about BC, and I have talked about BC before. New Brunswick last week became the second province to announce an outline for its market. It will create a new crown corporation, a new government weed. The province also announced a multi-million-dollar agreement with two LPs. Yeah. So New Brunswick is going to build on the LP system. Too bad. I'm skipping that because that just upsets me. And now I got a stupid advertisement in the way, and I don't know how to get rid of it to see the rest of this story. There we go. Quebec. Public hearings on recreational weed wrapped up earlier in the month. I wish they'd stop calling it weed. Recreational cannabis. The government plans to table its legislation this year. It's unclear what it will be like, but the drinking age there is 18, so the legal age will probably be 18. Ontario's the furthest ahead on implementing a framework. I touched on this. They are going to copy the LCBO, the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. They're going to create a CCBO, a Cannabis Control Board of Ontario. They will employ thousands of people in 150 to 200 stores, but they're going to shut down all the dispensaries first. Talk about a waste of money. Talk about not treating their own population with respect, because by shutting down all these dispensaries first, they're going to create a bunch of criminals that can't work in the network that they're going to build. So you're not going to have expertise in it. I suggest this will change because they're implementing the same thing with liquor that they've done with liquor for years and years and years. It works with liquor because prices of liquor are A beer is a beer is a beer. If the price is just a little higher in Ontario, somebody isn't going to drive all the way to BC to get some beer. But when it comes to cannabis, people want their quality, and you aren't going to get it from government weed. So people are going to continue to go through the black market or gray market to get it. I've said that about Ontario. This has a whole big long thing on Ontario. I'm not going to read it because I don't agree with the way they're going. Manitoba says all options are on the table. Hinted that putting the Provincial Liquor and Gaming Authority in charge of distribution would be a good idea, and it's not. Saskatchewan has launched an online survey, so they're waiting to hear back. Albertans were asked to fill out a survey. Making a submission or download a conversational toolkit as the government figures out how it's to be regulated. I filled out that survey. I shared that survey. The official plan is slated to be unveiled this fall, but the city of Edmonton is already flirting with the idea of lounges. I'm pretty sure we're going to be a bit of a mix between what the governmental leaning provinces and what I'm about to tell you about BC. BC, after Ontario released its detailed pot plan, cannabis plan. Come on, Vice. Newly minted BC Premier John Horgan provided hints on how the province, known for progressive approaches to cannabis and general drug policies, plans to regulate the industry. Horgan said in a radio interview that he is more than willing to, he wants growers and distributors to be able to participate as entrepreneurs, but officials need to regulate it. So yeah, he wants to introduce some regulations, but he wants to use the current framework and solidify it and make it better. That's listening to your people, and that's understanding that unless you make it easy, simple, and cheap, you aren't going to get rid of the criminal element. And that is the whole idea behind Trudeau's legalization plans, to get rid of the criminal element. So really, the feds should be saying, hey, you provinces that want to just take over and make crown corporations. In Alberta, we don't even have any crown corporations that I know of. And if we do, we certainly tried to get rid of them a while ago. We believe in free enterprise, and I really hope that it comes forward. That's Vice News. I'm going to have another talk on that because the cup is half full. And so I'm drinking from a half full cup, even though it's actually almost empty. Cheers. Because I believe that at least we're getting that step forward. Some are not taking the correct steps, but at least they're not going in the wrong direction. They may be taking small steps, they may be taking sideways steps that are slightly angled forward, but it's forward. It's a forward momentum, and we need to continue that, but we need to stay vocal with our representatives. If they want our vote, they need to understand our needs. That's the end of that piece. Let's move on. I have 4 other stories that are a little lighter and a little easier to discuss, and so let's move on. Here it is from marijuanatimes.org, a talk about how better cannabis education in medical schools is a requirement and is not happening. This is from one of the authors of this piece, and she is a future physician, 3rd-year medical student. As a future physician, it worries me, says the student's author. We need to know how to understand questions about medical marijuana's risks and benefits. But there is a fundamental mismatch between state laws involving marijuana and the education physicians in training receive at medical schools throughout the country. According to surveys completed by curriculum deans at 101 medical schools, over 2/3 of their graduates were not prepared to recommend or prescribe medical marijuana. The same surveys a quarter of graduates wouldn't even be prepared to answer questions about medical marijuana. And I find that here in Canada. Definitely even worse, I would say. Almost never do I find a medical, and I'm in the medical field. I'm a member of the medical field because I'm the patient. I'm very often with doctors, very often, and I always bring information with me, and I give them pamphlets, and sometimes they're interested, sometimes they're not. But it doesn't matter what they're interested in or not interested in. It's been a medicine here in Canada since the early 80s. It's about time every single doctor is at least fluent in the language of cannabis and cannabinoids and understands our endocannabinoid system and how it works. Minimum. It needs to be a part of all curriculum. They learn about medicines. It's important to learn about one of the newest, been around for longer than most medicines, longer than penicillin, longer than... Anyways, I encourage you to read the story. As usual, the stories are below, but this really goes on to talk about the poor state of education where doctors maybe only get into it, and I say it in Canada and I hate it. They get into it because there's money to be made from it. Some of them are advocates. We need more to be advocates, and the more they learn, the more they will be advocates. It is a natural state. When you learn about the plant and you learn about what it does and you see it happen, then people end up not just believing from that point on, but wanting to share that information, knowing that that information is not being shared well. And that's why I always encourage all of you, please share my news, share my stuff, because the more we can get out there, the more we can get people. Canada's leading the world in legalization to a degree. I think Portugal still did best, putting it all into the medical area, even if it's recreational, it's medical if a person, any drug, but that's getting too far. So let me move on. This is a nice story that I really like. The effects of long-term marijuana smoking on your lungs. And I love this. I'm reading a quote right here. Lifetime marijuana use up to 20 joint years is not associated with adverse changes in spirometric exhalation strength, measure of lung health. Now, this goes really in depth to explain that the way that they determine the strength of a person's lungs is by their ability to exhale. The strength of that exhale indicates the strength of the lungs. This is a big study between 18 and 59 years old, smoking marijuana to non-smoking at all controls, and people who smoke marijuana had the same and sometimes even better exhalation strength, spirometric strength measures of lung health. Better. So it's getting away from the old thought that because you smoke it, it hurts the lungs. It really does not. Yes, there are carcinogens, but it has the ability to clean up after itself. Smoking doesn't. Cigarettes does not. Let's move on to the next story. You can tell I'm a little nervous today. I've had a long week. I've had no sleep. I'm doing my best. I hope this is okay for all of you. I'm really trying. Peace and cheers, friends. The next story is from herb.co, Cannabis and Rheumatism. And I share this one as a story that I don't yet believe in. This is a story about Fitzgerald, who is a doctor who doesn't really believes that cannabis is a good medicine, but not that it'll fix rheumatism. Rheumatism is very much arthritis. It's the inflammation of joints and muscles around the joints and tendons and whatever. It is rather debilitating. It is rather difficult. What this, I need to turn the volume down on my phone. Sorry about that. That was my daughter. What this person is saying is that rheumatism has a different underlying mechanism and therefore cannabis doesn't work that well. Yet a study found in the Journal of Opioid Management conducted prior to Fitzgerald's study revealed that as of 2009, 80% of medical marijuana patients were using pot to treat myofascial pain. Myofascial pain is a chronic pain disorder that affects muscles and joints, like rheumatism. So, this is one where I give it to you to just build on the information. We have to read both sides of the coin because, no, it's not a perfect medicine because nothing is perfect. So let's learn as much as we can, make up our own decisions. So I don't always give positive stories. This one's a little bit negative, but does give both sides. So does it fix rheumatism? No. Can it be a help? There are thoughts that it could be, especially cannabidiol because of its anti-inflammatory. If you bring down inflammation, you solve some of the pain. It may not cure, but it can help. And again, it's individualistic. It depends on the individual. The last story is just a fun story for you to read if you want to read. Sort of the story that Wiz Kalifa is the new Snoop Dogg. And I personally am not into these. I think they help. I think these Snoop Dogg type celebrities help the advocacy of marijuana to some degree, but I think they also hurt it. When you talk to Snoop Dogg and he says 18 blunts, not joints, a joint's about that big, a blunt's about 2 times the size and 3 times the girth, 18 blunts a day. It kind of perpetuates the non-medical side of it as just being buzzed, and I like to perpetuate the other side. But again, to be whole, I'm sharing this. It's a good story. Wiz Khalifa has done a lot for the education of a group of a generation of individuals, like Snoop Dogg has done for my generation. We need more people like this, but we also need more people that are out there really fighting for the healthier ways instead of these blunts and these people just smoking all day long. I'd love to see somebody come forward and become a celebrity that shows the medical side of it, that shows, you know what, I ate it today. You're not going to see anything. We're just talk about it. That's my channel. Anyways, that's the end of Hippie News Network. I got baked and I didn't fake one little bit of news. I know that's a poor pun, and I'm not very punny, but I tried. So my friends, peace and cheers, love and harmony. Look for people without a smile and give them one of yours. We need smiles in this world. We need love in this world. I love you all. Peace and cheers. Love and harmony.